We're going to get started with our webinar this morning. This is a two-banger, if you will. We're going to be talking about the Holy Land, Israel and Jordan, as well as our Egypt and the Nile program that are scheduled for next year, February and March. Let me say a couple of words about Wheel and Anchor before we get into the nitty-gritty about the Holy Land and Egypt, which is our theme for today. Wheel and Anchor is a community of travelers from all across Canada. We've been around for coming up 5 years now. We had a little bit of a break there during that the P word that we won't mention, or the C word. When we started out, I have been working around the travel industry for about 30, almost 33 years now. It's hard to believe. And I have brought Canadians all over the world and organized trips to all corners of the globe. And the one thing that I found is that when you get a group of people who have a bit of a like-minded approach to travel, I'm here in Malta right now with a small group of your fellow members. And, you know, everybody likes to talk about the same kind of things and the same subjects. And we also like to not talk about other subjects. But the point is that as we explore, as we visit new countries and we taste new things and we try wines and all those different things, we share a certain commonality in the way that we act, the way that we behave, the way that we appreciate things. And it's that commonality, that like-mindedness, that is something that I think are one of the things that our members most appreciate about traveling with Wheel and Anchor. And so we've brought everybody together in this ever-growing community from all across Canada. We do some great trips all over the place, and knowing that you're kind of like amongst friends. And, you know, as we travel, and our goal for travel, of course, is to become well-traveled and connected to the people that you meet along the way. Actually, the photo that you see in front of you is a group of our members when we went to visit and have dinner with a local Egyptian family. This is one of the neat things that we do on our experience in Egypt, because you know, and I'm the gentleman that's in the picture in the back there, who was actually a police officer with the Egyptian police force. And, you know, we still connect with each other on WhatsApp. He sends me a message now and again, and that all came out of one evening. And so, you know, you develop a certain connection to the local people, obviously to your fellow travelers. And that's really what travel is all about. And I think what separates us. You know, here are a few other photos from our last trip to actually, this is our second last trip to the region. We were in Egypt with a small group on a very similar ship just 1 year ago, last March. And so here's a few shots from some of our members in the trip that we did. You might recognize this photo, which adorns our website as well. A grand time there at the pyramids of Egypt, the pyramids of Giza. So before we get any further, let me introduce our team. At least myself and Barb, who's joining me there on the screen. My name is Gordon Dreger. I'm the founder of Wheel and Anchor. As I say, I've been working around travel for coming up on 33 years and love every minute of it. In fact, I do these webinars mostly from on the road, as it were. I'm supported by a much bigger team than you see here, but some of our key team members are listed, and today, most importantly, Barb, one of our trip specialists. Good morning, Barb, who is one of the team that is on the other end of the line when you pick up to ask questions or to book a trip if you decide to come along with us. The other member of our team who I was hoping might be able to join us today, this is our Egyptologist and the host of the Egyptian part of our trip. His name is Mohammed Yunus. He is a incredible human being. He's Egyptian. He's from Cairo. He is one of the most well-versed people in Egyptology that I've come across. And also, as I say, he's a wonderful person, human being, and he's going to be the lead host and Egyptologist on this trip. He regrets he couldn't be with us today because this is peak season in Egypt, so he's really busy, but he sends a warm greeting and hello. And I know that members who have traveled on the last 2 trips that we made to Egypt will fondly remember him, because he has an incredible way of not just giving you the facts, but presenting the history of Egypt, and all of the gods and the temples and all of the stories that go together in such a way that makes it so compelling. And that's what really makes the difference when you're visiting a place like this, is to have people like Yunus, like his colleague Anwar, who I'm hoping and intending will be the other guide and Egyptologist on this trip. They really make all the difference. So that's greetings from Yunus. Our plan today, we're going to talk a little bit about what you can expect on these 2 back-to-back trips. So we're presenting them both in one, although we're offering them as 2 separate trips through the Middle East. First of all, Israel and Jordan, the so-called Holy Land, and then Egypt. And that's where we're going to be heading next year, this time, February and March of 2024. So first off, let's talk about the Holy Land. And of course, the Holy Land refers to that whole part of the Eastern Mediterranean that actually covers a lot more territory than this. It covers parts of Lebanon, it covers Israel, Jordan, parts of Syria, Egypt. But of course, the heart of all of that is this area in and around central Israel and Jordan, the Jordan River Valley. That's the river that floats into the Dead Sea here. Of course, Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Masada, all of these ancient sites that have so much history, and unfortunately, in the last number of decades, so much controversy as well. So our trip begins in Tel Aviv, of course, which is, of course, the capital of Israel. Well, it depends who you ask, so I got to be careful what I say, because, of course, Jerusalem is referred to as the capital by many people. So anyway, let's not get into that. But Tel Aviv is the largest city, and we're going to be visiting a little bit of the north part, Haifa, Nazareth, as well as, of course, spending 4 whole nights in Jerusalem. We're going to go overland from Israel over into, as I say, through the Jordan River Valley, heading first down to the Dead Sea coast. The Dead Sea is an incredible place to visit and hang out, and it'll be actually nice to have a little bit of downtime there, floating on this rather amazing body of water. We're going to visit Petra, the Rose City down in the south, as well as Wadi Rum, before heading back to Amman and wrapping up our tour through the Holy Land. And then for those that are interested in just coming on this trip, you can either fly back from there or continue on to Egypt, that I'll talk about in just a second. So let me cover off, and we have a lot to cover today. So in the interest of not making sure that you don't get bored or fall asleep in your tea, we're going to go through it fairly briskly. And I just want to give you a few of the highlights and why it is that we created the itinerary that we have. So as I say, the program starts off in Tel Aviv, an amazing city at the eastern end of the Mediterranean, lively, bustling, full of life, very youthful energy. They call it the nonstop city, amongst other things. And we have a lovely hotel, the Browns Hotel, that's right by the promenade here. And so right when you arrive in, you can immediately take a stroll up and, soak in the air. At this time of the year, it's sort of springtime there, but usually lovely, fresh. The sun is almost always shining. And we're going to begin our exploration of Israel here. We'll spend some time seeing some of the major and important sites in Tel Aviv. And of course, one of the most interesting parts, I think, from a historical standpoint, but also architecturally, is the port of Jaffa, which is the port that's referred to, if you remember the biblical story of Jonah and the whale, where Jesus sent the whale down to swallow Jonah to save him from drowning and all that stuff, was based here in Jaffa. And it's a lovely part of what's otherwise a pretty modern city in the meantime. And so this is what I like, is the contrast that you get by visiting Jaffa, which has the feel a little bit more of the Israel that you would expect. Whereas Tel Aviv, as I say, is modern. When you land on the plane, you almost think that you've landed somewhere in North America. That's how modern and the whole area is. Tel Aviv is a great gateway point to go up to the north. visit Haifa. And as we are going to, while we're up in the north, we're also going to take in Nazareth, which is the largest Arab town in Israel. And of course, we all have a little bit of a sense of, not just the history, but the politics of this whole region. And of course, the issues of Israel and Palestine. And this is what makes this trip interesting, is that there is a religious angle to it for those people who come to it, from different religions, whether you're Christian or whether you're Jewish or Muslim or something else. But of course, the mix match of all of these peoples and traditions from in here. Up in the north is where you'll also find the Druze people, and the Druze are a particular sect of Arab people. They might not even refer themselves as Arab per se, but they are from that sort of religious order, and they're a very close-knit community, much like the other communities that comprise both the Jewish community, the Palestinian community, and so on. So it's a very, very interesting, not just the beauty that you see in visiting places like Haifa, which, as you can see here, is very green compared to Nazareth, which is more in the desert landscape of Israel. And of course, you've got the Sea of Galilee up there, and all of them, when you go there, you can draw the connection to those things that you learned, particularly if you are of the Christian faith, when you, like me, went to Sunday school way back when. So after a couple of days, the first couple of days, sort of getting ready for our overall journey, we'll head then up into the hills. We drive up, and all of a sudden you emerge over a hill, and in front of you opens up Jerusalem, which is, by all accounts, one of the most fascinating places to arrive at. And so much is happening there. And, you can't help but have so much anticipation when you arrive into Jerusalem, which is why we're going to spend 4 whole nights there, and that'll allow us, quite a bit of free time to explore on our own, because Jerusalem is also one of those places, like anywhere, I say, but even more so, where you just need to wander and kind of get a sense of things and talk to people. We'll of course go up to the top of the Mount of Olives, which is a hill that overlooks the whole city, and from there you can pick out the different quarters, and you can see very clearly places like the Wailing Wall, which is of course the holiest place in Judaism, and to actually go there and witness that and think about all of the events that have transpired there in our lifetimes. It's just incredible. We'll tour through the different quarters of Jerusalem. A lot of people don't know. I remember before I went there for the first time, that Jerusalem is split into the Christian quarter and the Armenian quarter, the Arab quarter, and of course the Jewish quarter. And it's like walking into a different part of the region, not just all within the old city of Jerusalem. Really quite amazing. We then cross over one day into Palestine, where we'll find Bethlehem, the Church of the Nativity, the birthplace of Jesus. Once again, here, when you cross out of Israel proper, and you see the installations that separate the Israelis for the Palestine, it can't help but stir up all those emotions about that arise from the political tensions that are going on and on and on and seem to have no end. But nevertheless, Bethlehem, I think for all of us, or for most of us, I should say, is a very special place as the birthplace of Jesus. And just visiting that, no matter how religious you are, you can't help but to be taken aback when you enter the Church of the Nativity. And there's usually a long line of people that are waiting to go to the particular spot where they say that Jesus was born. But nevertheless, as I say, that whole experience is really a very, very important point on our trip. From Jerusalem as well, we head down the west side of the Dead Sea, down to the famous fortress called Masada, that was built by King Herod, that sits way up in the hills. So again, you come from a place like Jerusalem, if you can try and picture, which is, the whole area is quite arid, but at least, there's some trees and some green. You come into this stark desert that we're going to see more of in Jordan, but Masada up here is a rather spectacular fortress, and again a must-see day trip from Jerusalem. So again, we'll have some time in Jerusalem specifically in order to look around on our own as well, and then we will make a trip overland, crossing the Jordan River, crossing from Israel into Jordan overland, which again is an experience in itself. I mean, Israel and Jordan have quite friendly relations, as you know. By the way, we'll also make a stop to Yad Vashem. A lot of people ask about that. That, of course, is the Jewish Holocaust Museum that you'll find on the outskirts of Jerusalem. A very, very sobering monument. Much like the other monuments to memorials to the Holocaust that you'll find. When we get to Jordan, we descend down, of course, to the lowest point on the planet. Of course, as you know, the Dead Sea is some 400 meters below sea level. And our first stop will be the beautiful Mövenpick Resort, situated on the banks of the Dead Sea. And it is a very special part of the world because, as you can imagine, the oxygen levels here are higher. You can't help but to feel invigorated. You have this very stark desert-like landscape all around, and this sublime body of water that's out in front of you, which, you'd look like there'd be all kinds of people running into the water. But of course, the Dead Sea is so thick that you can float on top of it. And there's a picture of it in a second. But it's a good gateway point to visit some of the historic sites that you'll find in the immediate area. The Dead Sea is only about an hour's drive outside of the capital city of Amman, and nearby you'll find sites like Madaba, from which again you drive back way up into the mountains and have a view over the Dead Sea, the area all around. You visit this incredible shrine with some of the most amazing mosaics. It's like a map of the region. I mean, you think that this thing was created some 2,000 years ago, and yet, when you look at the map, it's almost like a modern day map. I mean, that's how old the sites and so on are of the region. Really quite interesting. And of course, as I say, we'll have some time. At this point, we'll have been on the road for over a week, and it's a good time to just soak in the waters of the Dead Sea. That's, of course, me there on my last visit. And it is remarkable. I think definitely one of the highlights for me is to float in the Dead Sea and cover yourself up with the mud, with all of its healing characteristics. You can go to a shopping center and buy the stuff for a fortune, or you can just travel to the Dead Sea and put the mud all over your body. It's a lot of fun. So as I say, after a couple of nights on the Dead Sea, we will then make our drive south. We're heading now towards Petra, which is of course the city of the Rose City, as it were. And before we get into Petra, we'll actually get a little an interesting stop called Little Petra, which is literally a sort of a smaller version of Petra, which is all of these sites that have been hewn from the rock, and will give you a taste of what to expect. This in and of itself is already really exciting before we actually arrive into the Rose City itself. And once again, we're staying at the best possible hotel, which is directly adjacent to the entrance, which is really an important point because you're going to spend the better part of your day on your feet when you're going into the Rose City, which is one of the 7 new wonders of the world. For anybody that's been there, and you probably know somebody that's been, it is just incredible. You can take a quite a long walk, so it's important that you're ready for that, because it's about a 4 to 5 kilometer walk. And here's the interesting thing: when you look at the landscape around, if you didn't know what you were going to see, because you will have already seen this webinar and the program itinerary and pictures in National Geographic, you would think there couldn't possibly be anything there. And you walk down this narrow canyon that weaves through the rock, which hides Petra from the rest of the world. And the first thing that you see, you come out of a cave And there in front of you is the treasury, which of course it's not the building shown here, but it's the most famous one, with this facade of these ancient buildings. Absolutely incredible. We spend a full day walking around, partly guided and partly just admiring all these sites on your own. There's so much to see in Petra that you could spend a lot more time there, but I think that one day for most people is enough to sort of take it all in, and you could spend as long as you like, because again, our beautiful hotel is situated right at the entrance to the Rose City, so you can sort of wander out whenever you like. So again, after a couple of nights down there, we now go to the south part of Jordan, and for our last night in town at Wadi Rum, which is this desert landscape. This photo gives you a great taste of it. The Valley of the Moon, and as I always say, it looks like an episode of Star Wars. And of course, the last episode of Star Wars that they made, the one back a couple of years ago, was filmed in and around Wadi Rum, and we'll stay at this rather interesting desert camp there, very luxurious, and this will undoubtedly be yet another highlight of your experience in Jordan, because you stay in these incredible domes that look out up to the rocks, up to the sky. There's of course virtually no light pollution here, and seldom ever a cloud. So it is a very, very special time, a very special experience to be able to stay in the middle of the desert in absolute luxury. And again, it's a great way to wrap up an incredible 2 weeks in this part of the world. We'll then head back to Amman, and we will spend one more night in Amman itself, which is quite remarkable because all of the buildings, like you see here, are sort of this sandy beige color. And as I say, it's the city of stairs. So, a tour of it on foot would be an arduous process, but we'll at least get a few of the key sites before finishing up our trip, and either heading on from here to Egypt, or for those that are just going to do the Holy Land portion of our tour, you can fly from Amman via a European gateway to get back to Canada. So that's part one. The Holy Land, again, an amazing program, and we've taken all of the best experiences and the feedback from our members to create an even better one for 2024. The second part of our trip, Egypt and the Nile. Wow, this is a beauty as well. I'm very excited about this, particularly because the highlight here is our cruise down the Nile on a dahabiya, not exactly the one that you see in front of you on the picture, but a brand new one that is literally under construction right now. So such that we don't even have pictures of it because it's not even totally built yet, but it's going to be finished in a couple of months, and we'll have some photos soon. So our trip through Egypt, of course, is going to start in Cairo. If you're joining us on the Holy Land part of the trip, we will fly from Amman directly to Cairo. If you're joining if you're coming directly from Canada, Egypt Air is in the meantime a great airline. You can fly nonstop into Cairo, where we'll spend the first couple of nights. We'll then fly down to Luxor and do the portion of the Nile between there and Lake Nasser, which is where the majority of the historical sites on the Nile is. So we'll cruise from Luxor south to Aswan and then back up to Luxor, but flying back to Cairo. So that is the overview of our trip through Egypt. So again, this trip will follow immediately after the Holy Land, beginning on March the 6th. Cairo, what to say about that city? It is hustle, bustle, and traffic mayhem, but nonetheless, it impressed me more than I thought it would. It's one of those places that you probably conjure up in an image in your mind, which might be from 40-year-old National Geographic magazines. It's a little bit more modern than that, but it's nonetheless no less chaotic. And as I say, we'll spend a couple of nights in Cairo, mostly to see, of course, the highlights here, which is Giza and the Great Pyramids. I mean, these need no introduction, and I'm not going to pretend to be an authority in all these, but beyond the architectural wonders that these are, beyond the historical significance that these have, what I found most fascinating for me was the mathematical, the science behind how these things were built, such that, of course, there is a great number of people who don't even believe that humankind were the ones to create them, because the positioning of them, the preciseness of the angles, and the distance, the measurements. There are so many aspects of these pyramids that I had no idea about until I first visited there, that you can't help but to be blown away. So we'll spend a good part of the day visiting the pyramids, visiting the Sphinx, and the other key historical sites that lie on the perimeter. In fact, we're going to be staying at the Mena House, which is arguably one of the best hotels immediately outside the pyramids. And if we're lucky, there may even be a light show in the evening where they light up the pyramids as well. So all depending on what the schedule is the next year. The other big highlight of Egypt, of Cairo, is of course the brand new Grand Egyptian Museum, and this is not it. And the reason that I didn't put a picture in is that this museum that they started building 20 years ago, or almost 20 years ago, is still not open. And the funny thing is, when we went in the beginning of 2020, just before the pandemic, they were all set to open it at the beginning of 2020. And then they didn't open it. And it has been delayed and delayed numerous times. And I know that our group went last year, was all set to visit the Grand Egyptian Museum, which will be the largest archaeological museum in the world, when it finally opens. But they didn't open last year either. And in fact, I was just reading that they have unofficially opened the doors to some of the big exhibition rooms literally last week. So we are very optimistic, but I won't make any guarantees, that by this time next year, it will finally be up and running, but it will be truly spectacular. This photo here is from the existing Egyptian Museum, which is in downtown Cairo, and is nonetheless super impressive. And so they've taken all of these treasures from all of the Egyptian temples that we'll be visiting along the Nile, and they'll be moving them. And of course, this museum is so small compared to the new one that they could only exhibit a fraction of the things. In particular, the famous it's not a mask, but the famous tomb of Tutankhamun, which of course you see and will be moved to the Grand Egyptian Museum when it opens. After our first few days in Cairo, we then of course fly down in big anticipation to travel on our dahabiya, the so-called Merit Star dahabiya. And as I said at the outset, this is not a picture of the dahabiya, but it will look very, very similar to this. A dahabiya is a vessel that was used by the nobility already back in ancient times. And so today, what you'll find when you're cruising on the Nile is there's tons of Nile vessels. Over decades, since tourism has become popular, for 100 years, people have been flocking to Egypt to see, these incredible historical wonders. And there are a huge number of big Nile boats that, typically house, 100 to 200 people. And they all look sort of the same. And then you have the craft, the vessels of the nobility, the dahabiyas, and they come in different sizes and shapes and so on. And our group that went last year in 2022 was on a slightly smaller version of this. And in fact, one couple is with me here in Malta right now, and they can't stop raving about it was a trip of a lifetime to do the Nile via dahabiya. So we're bringing that back to you next year on this brand new vessel that I do not have pictures of, because it is only scheduled to be completed in about April. So in a couple of months' time, or next month. And at that time, we will be sending all of those who are interested pictures of the brand new dahabiya. But the key facts about it are It's a private vessel we're chartering. It's all for us. So it's only wheel and anchor members on board, plus, of course, the crew and our 2 Egyptologists. So there will be 12 cabins only available on this sailing. So that's really, really important. That means there will be a maximum of 24 members. Usually we get a handful of singles, at least 3 or 4. So in all likelihood, it'll probably be around 20 people that join us on this experience with 2 Egyptologists, one of them being Eunice. And so we'll be 2 groups of 10 exploring all these sites along the Nile. So I cannot emphasize how unique and different an experience that is. It's going to be a marvelous trip. So I'll leave the ship aside for a moment. And as I say, I'll promise that, and perhaps if you're watching this as a replay, you will already have that information out. But as soon as we have it, we're going to send it out to you. Just briefly to the itinerary, as I say, we depart from Luxor and we make our way all the way down to Aswan, and we're going to stop at some places along the way. And some of them, let's face it, we're stopping at the most important ancient Egyptian sites that we'll visit. Places like the Valley of the Kings and Queens here, and again, these temples like the Temple of Queen, I can't even pronounce it, Hatshepsut, that you see here, just awesome. The tombs in the Valley of the Kings that we'll visit. And we are actually arranging to have a very special visit to a tomb that is not open to the public. Typically, you have to make a special arrangement. You have to pay a special extra and pretty significant fee to get in. I'm not even going to mention which one that is. But as I say, from the reports that I had from our members this past year, they said it was just incredible. And of course, all of the tombs that you visit are really, really good. One is better than the next. But then there are the ones that are not even open that are incredible. And so that's the kind of things that we can do when we travel with a small group. And that's how we're going to do it. As we head south, we stop at places like Edfu. And I am not the expert on all of this, and I could have Eunice here talking your ear off for hours about what makes these places significant. But the Temple of Horus, for example, is notable because it was almost entirely buried up to the brim in sand. And when they pulled all that sand, when they discovered the temple and pulled all that sand away, they found one of the best preserved of the ancient temples that you'll find along the Nile. We'll pass as well something, again, the big cruise boats don't see, Jebel El Sisila, which is the place where most of the Egyptian tombs, where they quarried out the stone, the rock for all of that. And so as a smaller vessel, we can pass slowly by and see where all of this, all of these incredible monuments got made at Jebel El Sisila. And we'll pull in that day actually to a neat part of the Nile River where you can actually go and take a swim. I think if you look at the river, for the most part, you're probably not going to immediately want to hop in, knowing all the places that it's flown through, but it is flowed through. But there is one spot where you can actually take a swim in the Nile, and it's, again, it's a little bit of a rite of passage for people. We'll then arrive into Aswan itself. Aswan, of course, the town sits below the high dam. And is quite a spectacle itself. Here our vessel will park for a couple of nights, and it'll give us an opportunity to see the dam, which of course holds back Lake Nasser, which is one of the largest artificial lakes, one of the largest reservoirs in the world. Lake Nasser in and of itself is an incredible wonder. You'll hear the stories about places like Abu Simbel that you'll also have the opportunity to visit that had to be moved from the shores of Lake Nasser. So we'll hear all about that. And then we'll have an opportunity for those that wish to actually fly down to Abu Simbel. And as I say, this is an incredible monument. You see a picture, the most famous picture of it here. I think this is a photo that I took myself of these giant statues. And, it's one of those places where I recall, a number of people asking, should I go? Is it worth the flight? I mean, it costs several $100 because you've got to fly down, because otherwise it's like a 4-hour bus ride across dusty roads each way. But I tell you, it's one of those places that it's hard to believe unless you've seen it, because they literally cut it into pieces and took it piece by piece from what would have other been a part underneath the lake, and brought it up and reconstructed it, and it is truly incredible. When we come back from Abu Simbel, or for those who don't go on the side trip, you'll have a tour in around Aswan itself, which is a beautiful city, and we'll then sail back north towards Komombo, the city of gold, with the famous temple, the Crocodile Temple, as it's called. It has, you know, hundreds of stone carvings of crocodiles in it, and then we sail again, continuing back north again, ending back up at Luxor, where we'll visit the Karnak and Luxor temples. And as I say, I cannot possibly do it justice, but when you hear the story out of the mouth of somebody like Eunice, who knows these places so well and tells the story of, you know, how all these things are connected, and the different gods and the pharaohs and all the rest of it, it is truly an incredible experience, one that you must not miss. We'll say goodbye to dahabiya and head back into Cairo for one more night in the capital city, where we'll have possibly a chance to get out, depending on the flight times and so on, and see a little bit more of Cairo. You might even want to stay a few extra days, and that's certainly an option for folks. Not you could if you want to stay longer in Egypt, one can fly down and spend some time on the Red Sea at Hurghada or Sharm el Sheikh, or if you're interested in more history, you could head up to the Mediterranean to a place like Alexandria. But in any event, our trip will culminate here in Cairo, and it's from here that we'll fly home, and having spent an incredible adventure in this part of the Middle East, that will be a trip that you will no doubt hold in your memories for a long time. So I'm going to touch on briefly the logistics, because as I say, this has been a bit of a long webinar, a lot to cover here. All of this is just being released today. So if you are interested, it's a good idea to let us know right away, because I think those 12 cabins will be sold pretty quickly, as with many of our other programs. The Holy Land, Israel and Jordan part of our trip here, you can see all of our pricing in Canadian dollars, is at $89.90 and $12,390 for double and single occupancy. Of course, the whole program that I described there, it's basically a week in Israel, a week in Jordan. So it's basically a 2-week program, staying at terrific hotels. Again, wonderful guides, the Dead Sea, and our usual inclusions on that program. With the only thing being extra being airfare, insurance, of course, and your visa fees for Israel and Jordan. For our Egypt and the Nile program, these are our pricing here. We have, as I say, only 12 staterooms available on this dahabiya, so it's limited to that. So somewhere around 20 people with 2 guides. So everything will be done in groups of roughly 10 to 12 people. And here is the pricing here. But I was able, because this is a brand new ship, to make a special arrangement. We have an early bird deal available for those that sign up in the near future, in the next 6 weeks before April 15th. It'll be $500 off these rates here. And just to note, we have 8 so-called deluxe staterooms, 2 so-called junior suites, which are somewhat larger at the aft of the ship, and then 2 balcony suites that actually have little outdoor balconies, beautiful spot to admire the Nile. As I say, as soon as we get photographs of those, we'll put those into a little separate brochure and send those out to you. And the program in Egypt, of course, your hotel accommodation, 4 nights, in Cairo, in total 7 nights on board ship. So it's a 11-night program with full board, of course, on the ship, an incredible service. As I say, your Egyptologist and the special entrance fee to the special tomb that we're going to visit in the Valley of the Kings. And so the only thing that you have to look after is your alcoholic beverages on the dahabiya, your visa, your e-visa for Egypt, And then if you want to go off to Abu Simbel, that is a special side trip that you can do as well. So as I say, for the Egypt portion only of our trip, an early bird special is in place because this is a brand new ship, and because we don't have pictures. So I was able to get them to give us a bit of a deal, $500 per person. If you sign up for that trip before April the 15th. We only need a deposit now, and final payment is due several months from now. So all you need to do for that, is give us a call, give Barb or Paul a call, and get signed up for that. So just a couple of points, but then if you do have any questions, now is the time to ask them. But of course, you can always email us or give us a ring. Airfare into this part of the world at the moment, still staying pretty steady from what we've seen from recent years. Depending on where you're coming from in Canada, you're probably looking for about $1,000 to $1,600. And as I say, there's our contact information if you don't get your questions asked now. So Barb, how are we looking for questions?
Do you want to touch, you're in desert area, how hot is it?
Yeah, good point. Yes, and I forgot to mention the weather. So it always comes up at the end in the question and answer session. So this time of the year is early spring. So what you'll find in Israel and Jordan is it's around the Dead Sea area. It's usually quite warm, as well as in the south in Wadi Rum, because you are in the middle of the desert. But this is early spring, so it's not going to be 40 degrees. If anything, I think that you'll find the temperatures in Israel, as I say, in the lower parts, like in the Dead Sea, probably are going to be in the low 20s in the day, and it'll cool off at night. Jerusalem, being higher up, is a bit cooler. It's probably going to be in the high teens, so it's perfect weather for walking and touring around. As for Egypt, again, you're in the desert, but it does cool off at night. And in fact, this is why we bumped the trip. When we first went at the end of January, beginning of February of 2020, we were all surprised how cold it was. When we got up in the morning, I think the temperature dipped down to about 10, 11 degrees, and some people were a little bit ill prepared, myself included. It is when we get into late February, early March, the temperatures during the day are perfect. They're in the low 20s. This is the best time of the year to visit. It can be a bit cooler at night.
Okay, perfect. We have a member asking if there's a visit to the Temple of Isis. She said, sorry, I might have missed it, but
the Temple of Isis.
Yeah.
Isis, is it?
Isis?
Which one is it? Yeah.
Philae?
Is it so many temples? I am not 100% sure. That one is one we'll have to get back to you on. If you have a question about specific temples, because there are so many, and I can't even remember them all, even though we had a great history lesson there. So if there's a specific one, please let us know, and we will check with Eunice, our Egyptologist, and find out. There are so many temples in Egypt, but we're certainly visiting all of the most prominent ones.
Okay, perfect. And somebody's wanting a review of the dates for each of those sections.
Yeah, no problem. So the dates for the program are, where are they? Let's see, let's go back here. Okay, sorry, I have to go back to the thing because I don't have all that. I got to go back to the first page. Do you have happen to have that?
I have, so Israel and Jordan is the 21st of February to the 6th of March. And then I guess it's the 6th of March. I don't have the Egypt.
And then Egypt will be March 6th until the 17th, because it's 11 nights.
Right.
So,
okay.
And as I say, all of the details, of course, as usual, will be in the program itinerary. It's almost finished. It's almost hot off the press. It's still cold in the press, but by the time the newsletter rolls out this weekend and we have the replay of this webinar available, we'll send it out to you all at the same time.
Okay, perfect. We do have a question which we do sometimes get. So if somebody is booking as a single, are they able to then change it to a double later on if they have a friend or somebody that wants to join?
No problem.
Okay.
No
all
problem.
Right. And then
double to single or single to double, it's no problem. A room is a room, and that's no problem.
Yeah, because people probably want to book as soon as possible, so they wouldn't want to hold off on that, I think.
Yeah.
I think there's another question coming in here.
Yeah. There's a question here about
Oh,
the commenting on the political stability in
right.
Israel when traveling through the Palestine. Listen, this part of the world is unpredictable. I mean, generally speaking, it is absolutely safe. The issue, as with many parts of the world, is between them. It's not involving anybody else, so they're certainly not after tourists. But it does change from time to time, and so the security situation changes. But for the most part, if you look at from a traveler perspective, from a touristic perspective, over the last 20 years, there's been relatively few occasions when you haven't been able to go. But of course, yeah, something we have to keep an eye on. And obviously we are not going to do anything to put our members at risk. So that's about all I can say about that.
Okay. Can you just flip back to the pricing chart somebody's asking?
Yep. I think the best thing is take a look at the program itinerary. When it comes out, all of the prices, all of the details will be in there. So it's the double pricing for the Holy Land and Jordan and Israel is $89.90 for the 2-week program, and for Egypt it's $79.90 with a $500 early bird discount if you sign up before the deadline that we've been given by the dahabiya, so by the middle of April. And as I say, all of the details will be in the program itinerary.
Right. Okay. We do have one more question that just came in. Are the waters calm for sailing on the Nile?
Yes, the Nile is always dead calm. Yeah, because it's the Nile. So you have hardly any movement. That's a very good question. This is a river cruise for all intents and purposes, so you barely feel the boat move at all. The only time you'll feel a bit of movement is there's a set of locks that you go through between Luxor and Aswan when the boat's going in and out. But I mean, even then, it's not noticeable. So I don't know anybody that's had issues with motion sickness, but thank you. That's a great question.
Okay, that is all that's come in here.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Next we have the Koh Samui, right?
Exactly. Next week, we have our webinar on our live away in Koh Samui, where we just came back from a couple of weeks ago. So we are heading back next year. If you want to join us for that webinar next week, that is on next Wednesday, I believe, March the 8th. Do join us for that webinar, and the details will be in our newsletter that comes out on Saturday. So look out for that. And the week after, we're going to be introducing our live away here in Malta, where we're going to be coming back next year. So stay tuned for all that. Thank you for joining us today. As I say, I do hope you'll join us. This is an incredible, so once in a lifetime program to the Middle East. So we'd love to have you on board. And so, yeah, do give us a call and get yourself signed up if you'd like to come along. Take care. Have yourselves a good week. Bye-bye.